Hello everyone. Welcome to Deconstructing Politics. I am your host, Elijah Kinnear.
And I'm Tommy Mulcairns.
Just like Joe Biden, the Democratic Party does not listen to young voters, and they do not listen to us.
In his defense, he's not listening to anything. He is way too old and zoned out at this point.
Exactly. So if you all have been paying attention to current events, Trump recently said some things about Milwaukee that weren't very nice. Tommy, you want to read that quote?
I thought it was glowing praise.
Oh.
Donald Trump called Milwaukee a horrible city when speaking to a closed-door meeting with a lot of Republican legislators and CEOs.
Yeah, and the Democratic mayor of Milwaukee said if Donald Trump wants to talk about things that he thinks are horrible, all of us lived through his presidency, so right back at you, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that this is super out of character for Donald Trump. I don't think that this is... He thinks that anything that isn't New York, because we don't have a building with his name on it, he's going to think that we're a horrible city.
Honestly, can you imagine the Trump gold letters on Northwestern Mutual Building? I'm good. I think our city's great.
You don't think it would add to the skyline?
I don't think so, I think we're an amazing city, and I would probably sleep better without the Trump letters.
I disagree. I think there'd be a beautiful nightlight.
A nightlight? Yeah, they're glowing the guy LEDs.
What do you think that the political play is here? Because, to talk bad about Milwaukee, it seems like Wisconsin is a battleground state. Milwaukee is the biggest city. You would think that Trump would be trying to win some votes. So what's he doing calling us a horrible city?
Honestly, I think you probably have heard this from rural Wisconsin, other cities in Wisconsin. There's this big thing. I remember this when I moved down to Milwaukee. Everyone's like, "Oh, you're moving down to Milwaukee? You gotta be careful. You gotta be safe and all that. It's dangerous." I think this is just another appeal to kind of like the more conservative rurals who think that Milwaukee is this big, scary city. So, of course, Trump isn't going to win Milwaukee. We saw how blue it went in 2020. I don't think he really is losing much here, but it is kind of definitely a misstep.
I obviously Trump is not winning Milwaukee, but I think that he would be looking to siphon off some votes. Especially given Trump is gaining a little bit of popularity within the black community and within the younger people community. And you would think that he would be trying to win some, just the margins, right? Because everyone knows this election is going to come down to a couple hundred thousand votes, and a lot of those votes are going to be within Milwaukee, or within Wisconsin. We are a battleground state. We are one of the most important states. So you would think that he would be trying to win votes here. I think he's just given up on Milwaukee. I think he knows Biden has bombed his own campaign enough.
Well, I think a trend that we've been seeing on the news and pundits have been talking about is that he's been very random at these speeches. He goes off on tangents. So I think this is another Trump gaffe where he just says what's on his mind and he wasn't thinking about the political consequences. The Republicans tried to do cleanup duty and they said, well, Trump was just talking about the crime that's in Milwaukee. But, both you and I know that if you want to talk about crime, it's mostly Republican policies that are causing that, like poverty and over-policing.
Yeah, and what Trump is mad about is that Milwaukee, a lot of people are getting away with crime. Trump is just mad that he couldn't cover up those porn star hush money payments better. I think he's jealous is what it is.
Yeah. He's not covering up enough of that here in Milwaukee, so... But yeah, so speaking of recent news and speaking of people that have been convicted, Hunter Biden, the son of Joe Biden, recently got convicted.
Yes, he did. He was convicted on Tuesday of all 3 felony charges related to the purchase of a revolver in 2018 when prosecutors argued the president's son lied on a mandatory gun purchase form by saying he was not illegally using or addicted to drugs. This is according to CNN.
Yeah, this is really interesting because Republicans were going on and on about how, this is a witch hunt, they're targeting this, famous, powerful person, and then, literally the next week, Hunter Biden's guilty, and I think everyone can agree, yeah, he was probably guilty. The guy probably, we all know, which the Republicans, droning on and on about, Hunter Biden had a crack issue, he had some drug problems.
Sorry, he's cool.
No, we do not endorse crack, Tommy.
We is a strong word.
Okay, but like in all seriousness, like yeah, that's against the law. So yeah, Democrats really were like, yeah, no, this is expected. I think Biden released a statement saying he would not pardon his son, and that's just how the law works. The young people like to joke that it is cool, which I mean, it's a little bit.
Well, I mean, I think it's crazy that Republicans, when it comes to buying guns, they don't draw the line at like mental health issues that have been clearly demonstrated. Like, you can buy a gun if you have been deemed not mentally fit to have control of your own money, but you can't buy a gun if you're doing some crack cocaine on a Saturday night. That's pretty wild that they decide to draw the line at crack and not mental health issues.
Yeah, no, like it really should be. I mean, if someone's drug problems, I mean, for one thing, that's just systematic. That's the poverty. That's the people that are, really, it's like a mental health issue in itself. Seemingly, that's like less horrible, well, more horrible than like, oh, someone with schizophrenia buys a gun. That's totally A-okay. That's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. The problem there is that white people have mental health issues, whereas crack use is associated with black communities.
That's not what I was saying. That's
No. Wait. Like, this was a very purposeful, rhetorical trick that the Republicans did, right? Was like this was the justification for the war on drugs. They pumped a bunch of crack specifically into black communities and then turned around and overpoliced those black communities. Right. That's what I'm saying. Not that. Yeah.
I see where you're getting at. Yeah, no. And with that viewing of things, I just think it's weird that we have these like deregulated drug laws, but like suddenly like this is like, oh, this is horrible, like this is where we're going at it. And I mean a lot of it a lot of the Republican narrative has been very political. Meanwhile, the Democrats are like, yeah, dude should not have a gun. So, and I think that's the biggest difference between these two convictions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just throwing out there that Hunter Biden having a gun is not really a threat to anyone. I don't think he was planning to use it. From what I've heard of the story, it was more just like an impulse buy. It was not like he had some plan to go and like rob or like hold up anything. It was more just he bought it on a whim and then immediately got rid of it. So like it's a trumped up charge, pun intended. But I think that what it was like trying to have some like view of political bipartisanship when it comes to convicting Trump and Biden. I think they just needed a Biden to convict, and this is what they went after them for.
Yeah, that's totally a fair view of it.
Enough about Hunter Biden.
And in other news, so we have an update on a long-standing subject we've been talking about, which has been the UWM protests in regards of support for Palestine. And today we have someone that has been on the show before, our good friend Tavo, who was at a protest of the Board of Regents, in which a member gave a speech and disrupted the meeting, and a bunch of people did get detained and then cited. So
just to set the background a little bit. So it was a Board of Regents meeting that was focused. It was the economic aspect of the Board of Regents. They were having a meeting about it at UWM. A bunch of us in the UWM YDSA and Students for a Democratic Society. We are part of the coalition for the UWM Justice for Pally coalition. We came together and protested this event, and all of us got let out, and some of us got booked and got letters saying we were banned from the union, and now we have a follow-up with Tavo.
Very true, very true. And Tavo, go right ahead.
All right, yeah. So funny thing with the whole ban from the union, part of the reason that they cited for that was that I wasn't a student, so I was like misusing like community resources or whatever, but like I was, and then later they sent out a letter saying like, oh, whoops, you're unbanned actually.
Well, I mean, it was
sorry. What we were hearing is that there was a lot of disorganization on the ground. Like, cops didn't really know what's going on. Everyone didn't know what's going on. There was a lot of confusion in the detain and especially what charges you guys would get.
Well, the one area where they were organized that I thought was really interesting was like they didn't know whether they were citing us or arresting us, but they didn't know, like they had enough foresight to print out these letters saying that every single person who was attending was not a student, right? Like, and that was like what you were talking about, Tavo, where they had to come back and basically say, actually we are or actually you were a student, we messed up. Like, I think it's very weird that they had these letters printed off in advance that said that everyone there was not a student.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree with that. They didn't do like any sort of checking, just trying to get us booked as fast as possible, really, except that they also did it in like 2 groups. So I thought that was fine at first because there was one group of people who went in, and then later they went and they got me and 2 others and brought us in. And we were led to believe that we were going to like be taking 2 our friends who were already like taken in, but
Well, and you were sort of told, right, that you were not getting a citation unless you came back to the union within a month, right? Like, you were led to believe, I remember afterwards, everyone was talking about how basically you guys had not gotten citations. You guys had gotten a warning that if you came back to the union within this time span, then you would be getting a citation. But you were in the clear after the event, right?
yeah, I mean, that's what I thought too. I didn't really think that they were going to like spend resources on students also who were like protesting genocide. Like,
Right.
that seems kind of ridiculous, like on our own campus.
Interesting that they cited students. Like, when it wasn't students, when they put out the letters, it was just a warning that you were banned from the union. But then when they found out you were a student, they turned around and handed you a fine. How much was that fine? Is there any plan with the coalition going forward about how to handle this legally?
So that fine was $300, and what I'm waiting on right now is I've talked to our other coalition members. I believe that we're gonna get in contact with our legal team, trying to figure out like what all we're gonna do about it, because I wasn't the only one. There were members from another organization as well. As far as I know, I'm the only one who has seen the citation. I'm from YDSA, but I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of other members who were booked at the time also get one.
What were you guys cited for specifically?
Disorderly conduct.
Disorderly conduct.
That
Okay.
was the general one. I got the I took a picture of the letter they gave out.
Yeah, if you want to pull that up quick.
Yeah, state statute UWS 18.11 parentheses 2, and I think that somewhere in here we also have a screenshot of what specifically that entailed. If I can.
Because, I mean, I think it's hard to... It seems like a free speech issue, right? It's a Board of Regents meeting that's open to the public. It's on a public university. The protest, from what I understand, what you're about to pull up is part of it says that you cannot engage in any campus activities that would disrupt another campus activity, basically. But I think that our disruption was minimal, and I find it hard for them to argue legally that there was any type of disruption to the event beyond 10 seconds, which seems... It seems excessive to cite people for a $30 or $300 for a 10-second disruption, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And like, I guess to me, what is written here is kind of vague. The specific part is no person may engage in violent, abusive, indecent, profane, boisterous, unreasonably loud, or otherwise disorderly conduct other than the circumstances in which they conduct tends to cause or provoke a disturbance in university buildings or on university lands.
Very vaguely written. I mean,
Yeah.
or any other disorderly conduct that can fall under anything. Like, at what point does something become not just a disruption, but an actual protest, in which case I think would be protected by the First Amendment?
No, exactly.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Tavo, for the update on the ongoing situation when it comes to Wisconsin for Pally. Of course, it's been a very internal discussion about those charges, and hopefully we'll be able to support you guys more. And hopefully, I'm really hoping that cop doesn't show up to the court commencement.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck to you guys in the future. I'm sure we'll have you on for the updates with the court case that's going to be happening.
But
yeah, best of luck to you, Tavo.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
Wow. I believe $300, right? It was the
Yeah,
fine.
$300.
Jesus. My God. That's most of my rent. I cannot even imagine.
Hopefully, we have coalition partners who are going to be stepping in to help the broke college kids with this citation, because $300, I mean, that is, I'm with you, Eli, that is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Especially with this raise in tuition that UWM just did. You'd think that they would have enough. You'd think that they'd be rolling in it, but nope, they just need to extract more money from students for protesting a genocide.
Absolutely. And then the next thing, and I think our big item for today, is I don't know how many people have been following Europe and the news going on there, but there has been a massive far-right resurgence in the European elections. So for those that don't know, European countries just held elections to decide who will represent their country in the European Union. And basically what this means is every European country has their own legislative assemblies, but the EU, the European Union, which is a body of most of the countries in Europe, has their own legislative body to decide what Europe as a whole will do, spending, all that sort of thing. And they have elections. They have political parties and alliances that get elected to represent their viewpoints from their parties.
Sort of like how the U.S. has like states elect their own representatives to the national U.S. House of Representatives, right? The U.S. being the European Union, and then states being each individual country.
Exactly. That's a great way to think about it. Wisconsin has their state representatives, and then we also have we elect people to Congress. So in the recent European elections, so far-right parties in France, Italy, and Germany made huge gains.
I think you can call them fascist.
Yeah, I mean, just for people that don't know, in France, those far-right, in France and Italy, they won the most votes of any party, while the German Fascist Party, that should raise some alarm bells, placed second.
Eli, what happened last time the German Fascist Party came into power?
Gee, I don't know. It's been a while since I've taken a history class, Tommy. I don't know. There was something about a genocide?
I think, genocide. I think some people were at war. I don't know.
Yeah, no. So for a lot of people that have at least a basic understanding of history, this should be very concerning.
We're talking about the Nazis.
Yes, we're talking about the Nazis. All three parties have ties to Nazis and Mussolini. For example, the Italian far-right party that made massive gains in the European election, their party is a direct successor of the Italian fascist party led by Mussolini. The AfD, which started off as a, kind of like right-wing populist, kind of like MAGA Trump-inspired party, very opposed to immigration and the refugee crisis in Europe, has a lot of ties to neo-Nazi movements within Germany. Many of their members have done apologia for Nazi Germany, and some have gone to neo-Nazi events. So we're talking about parties. Oh, and in France, the current leader Le Pen, her father, who led the party for a very long time, denied a lot of the fascist French government's involvement in the Holocaust, and they also have a lot of ties to neo-fascist, neo-Nazi movements. And in response, Macron, in this sweeping victory for the far right in France, called for a snap election and for the parliament to basically dissolve.
Yeah, and I think, from what I understand, Macron's thinking here is that he wants to challenge French voters. He wants to basically say to them, look, I'm going to give you one more chance. Are you sure that you want to elect fascist government or a fascist... Do you want to elect fascists? And so the parliament, the French parliament, is separate from the European Union. So the victories that the French far-right party had in the EU elections are still going to stand. But what Macron is doing is he dissolved the lower body of the government, and he is basically saying, we're going to hold elections for these within a month. And the French people, I want you to really think about, do you actually want these far-right parties to be in power? This is your chance to come out strong with a statement saying that you are not in support of these French parties.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how that turns out. Recent polls show that the main contenders are the far-right party led by Marine Le Pen and the Popular Front. And for those that don't know, the Popular Front is a coalition of every left-leaning socialist party in France, with Macron's party actually coming in third in the parliamentary elections.
Wow. Macron is unpopular. Well, and this is what's sort of worrying, right, is like Macron is taking a big risk here by calling these snap elections, because if he is able to, if his bet pays off, right, and the French people don't elect a fascist government, that puts his party in not much better of a spot than they're in, which they're already very much unpopular. But if the far right turns around and has a huge showing in this snap election, then he is setting up Marine Le Pen for a huge victory in 2027, essentially ousting him and her. Well, he has to step down at the end of his term anyway, but it's essentially guaranteeing the far right a victory in the 2027 election and ensuring that they can fill up the French Parliament.
Oh, exactly. And you know, Tommy, I'm a huge nerd for these kinds of things. It's very interesting because Macron's party, which is this more centrist, more liberal party, came into power by the collapse of France's Socialist Party. And now the French Socialist Party, which has been dormant, basically collapsed to a minority in the parliament, is surging with this new like left-wing coalition past Macron's party. So we're seeing like a shore up of French politics of the right, both the far right and I believe the center right party joined a coalition with them. Being shored up on one side, and the left vote being shored up in this this left-wing coalition, and we've seen Macron's party basically that was built around him just kind of collapse. So I think this is gonna be the end of Emmanuel Macron, who's been in power for a long time. I mean, I remember in high school talking about Macron.
Yeah, you know, I think I 100% agree, and I think the worrying thing is that it seems like it may be not worrying. As a socialist myself, I would like to see the neoliberal center-right parties in Europe be ousted. However, it seems like Europe is moving more to the right, and my fear is that Macron will get ousted. The other center-right parties, the centrist parties within Europe, are going to get ousted, and what they will be replaced with is a far-right government, and that happening across Europe, right? Like in World War II, it was just the Germans and the Italians within Europe, but if we're talking like Germans, Italians, and the French, all at a time when France, Italy, and Germany are Europe's three biggest economies, that has serious implications for the future.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's important that we talk about why this is happening. And a lot of the reasons why this is happening is, I mean, Europe, I think, as we know, has experienced a massive migrant surge when it comes to asylum seekers and refugees from the Middle East and all the chaos that is happening under there. I mean, that's originally how the AfD, this far-right party in Germany, surged to prominence. This is how the fascist party under Meloni in Italy came to power. And a lot of this resentment from people who have been under a lot of what we would call neoliberal, or at least, you know, center-left moderate leadership has stirred, because a lot of people have a lot of resentment of moderate politics that they think are not improving things at a expectable rate, of which they have experienced, you know, inflation, higher cost of living, all these sort of issues. And then the far right is able to place this blame on a lot of immigration and a lot of these more right-wing, far-right talking points that has led to the rise of all these parties. And now we're seeing in that France. And France was able to, I mean, France and Germany were able to stave it off longer than Italy, mostly because Italy has a lot of nostalgia for those kind of politics. But we're seeing it come back into resurgence. So now we're in this issue where Europe's like three main countries. I mean, you can ask any American to name three European countries, and they'll say France, you know, Germany, Italy, and
maybe England, but we don't count England.
You know, we don't count England. We don't count England on the show.
Fake country.
Exactly. But so you're seeing this big resurgence, and I mean, this isn't really. The thing that's striking to me is this isn't very much disconnected from what's happening in America. I mean, we're kind of seeing this resurgence of Trump, the way he's polling, and a lot of the sentiments amongst the American voter, this kind of resentment and discontent with the moderate wing, you know, I guess in our context is represented by Joe Biden, the Democratic Party. And then you have this far right opposition led by Trump and the 2025 project that is kind of like very comparable to these like fascist right-wing parties in Europe.
100%. And I think like what's important to note between the last time fascism was really on the rise in Europe and America somewhat, but especially in Europe and today's fascist rise, is that both times they were preceded by this gigantic opening up movement towards capitalism, right? So what I'm talking about is the Thatcher era and the Reagan era opened up this huge wave of pro-market reforms that essentially took off any guardrails that ever existed before, that were kind of keeping the worst bits of capitalism at bay. Thatcher and Reagan removed these, and then slowly over time, like you have some market reforms, or like you have some progressive quote-unquote policies, but at the end of the day, we made a huge movement towards pro-capitalism. What winds up happening is you have this working class portion of the population that is incredibly affected, that begins to experience very real pain and very real problems within a hyper-capitalist economy. And their pain is very easy for far-right groups to pick up on and then utilize for their own goals, which is to distract from the real problem, which is, right, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, this is an unequal society, and then turn around and place the blame on the weakest segments of society. It's very easy to point to immigrants, or in the 30s, the Jews, like these minority groups that have no power, turn around and say it's their fault that society is the way that it is, and we need to stamp them out. And that is fascism, right? Like at its core. So I think that we said this is the logical endpoint of neoliberalism, and unless you have a true socialist alternative which can reach out to working people's genuine pain and material interests and say, look, there is a way that we can do better, and it's not the fault of the weakest people in society, it is the fault of the most powerful. I think that you are going to have this slide towards fascism.
Exactly. I mean, a lot of this discontent that we're seeing in Europe and in America is discontent with the ruling, what you would call like center left or quote unquote left wing ruling party. In Germany, we see that the ruling coalition, which is made up of the SPD, the Green Party, and a Liberal Party, they're faltering. They have more inflation, the cost of living is hitting them. In France, Macron tried to raise the retirement age while they're suffering with all the same effects. And especially with Italy, they were able to very hard play off the plights of Italy are coming from this massive immigration wave. And now we're seeing that in America. I mean, you can see all over the news in America that Republicans are really focusing on the border crisis, this massive influx of immigrants, combined with the fact that we do have inflation and that we do have this cost of living crisis. And they're saying, well, it's the immigrants doing this. And I think not to say that all these experiences in all these countries are comparable or the same, but you see that it's kind of the same underlying narrative where the blame is not being placed on the ultra rich who are making way more money than the working class, but instead on, well, it's the immigrants coming and taking our jobs, it's the immigrants coming in and moving and raising housing prices, all these sort of things. And it worked well for Italy, and now we're seeing kind of the same effect hitting Germany and France.
I think, Eli, maybe one place where we disagree is that I would say that all of these situations are comparable and are interlinked. I think in a global capitalist economy, right, the forces driving inflation and all these things are the exact same. I think that there are particulars within each country of how it's playing out, but at the end of the day, this is what happens with capitalism over time, right? And completely agree with you, though, that instead of blaming the corporations which are raising prices, the governments which refuse to crack down on those corporations, we turn around and we blame the immigrants who are coming in and working the lowest paid jobs.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's definitely the underlying reason, and that why we're seeing this such big crisis.